One lady to break the monotony, but we'll continue. Boyish out issues as well. So a lot has been happening, especially in Kakamega, with the Devolution conference, and that will be the biggest discussion this morning. There's a bit of politics here and there. On the front page of the Daily Nation, has Ruto taken a knock from Raila? That's one big question. And given the kind of headline we saw in yesterday's Daily, where the Deputy President held another meeting with the Wiper Party Chairman, Professor Kivutha Kibwana, that's the governor from Makueni, and it also raised questions, and we'll be looking at that. Plus, Raila, on the front page of the Standard, Raila Party pushes for Prime Minister's post. This is another discussion that has been continuing away from the floods and rains, and of course, it's World Malaria Day as well. But gentlemen, even before we get to the politics, which we'll discuss towards the end of the news review, let's take a look at what's happening in Kakamega with the Devolution Conference. 5 years on, this is the 5th annual Devolution Conference, and that address by the President yesterday, which he made from State House Nairobi, televised at the conference because he was not able to travel to Kakamega, has made it to the headlines. It is a splash on both the Daily Nation and the Standard this morning. Counties get 50 billion shillings to overhaul main towns. That's how the headline reads on the front page of the Standard. 50 billion fresh funds to back up counties. Big question is, when we discuss devolution and the debate even in Kakamega right now, it's very hard for the governors and senators or even MCAs to just take the conversation away from money. It's all about more resources, more money. But it appears even the President is reading from the same script. Is it just a matter of throwing money at the problem? Yes, we do understand there are things that need to be done. But is it just a matter of throwing money there?
The essence of devolution was to take developments to the ground. And of course, development can only happen with availability of resources. And the main element of resource has always been money. But essentially, there must be some kind of shared resource mobilization. The national government should raise resources and share with the county governments. But principally, the county governments should also raise their own resources and plow those resources in development issues. That's the bottom line.
Yes, but there are issues that have been raised. And just before the Devolution Conference kicked off, all the polls on in media, on the dailies, even I remember Citizen TV on a Monday Special commissioned a poll on Twitter with regard to the performance of counties. And the main question, the main complaint that came out from members of the public is the kind of corruption that is present at the county level. So when we keep on putting money into the same basket that has so many holes, are we really sorting out the problem?
I think it would be wrong for us to put all counties under the same loop, because we have seen some counties performing very well, and we can see value for devolution in them. However, in some, there is a lot that is left to be desired. And I tend to believe, maybe as consolation, that is because devolution is still young. And I say as a consolation because I don't want to imagine that we'll have this perpetually. But in terms of the amount of money that was set aside or that was announced by the President, I think it's a very good move, because we have seen some of our counties, including mine, like Murang'a, where the current county headquarters would actually not qualify as headquarters of any county, because possibly devolution came, but we never put any resource in terms of upgrading, especially the headquarters of those counties. And therefore, the 50 billion will go a long way in terms of developing infrastructure, because in my assessment, I think especially the headquarters of counties should be in such a way that they are models of other towns within the counties, in terms of the roads, in terms of the lighting, that is security, in terms of electricity, in terms of access, and in terms of wholesome infrastructure. And I believe, because this is a grant that the national government will be giving to counties, grants are usually conditional. And I believe the national government will structure this money in such a way that if this money is being given for street lights of a certain street, if this money is being given for tarmacking of a certain road, it will go directly into doing that. But wholesomely, I have to say that devolution, we are still learning, and one of the issues, this is my personal opinion, that I feel we have to do and review is the matter of healthcare. Because I think we rushed into devolving healthcare. But in my opinion, I think the best way is actually not to take it back to national government. My opinion is that in terms of personnel, we should have some kind of a commission that handles all personnel who work in our private health entities, and leave the governors and the county government for the infrastructural development and other facets of the healthcare.
Something similar to the TSC.
Yeah, something similar to TSC.
But back to this issue of the grant by President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Yes.
He knows what's happening at the county level. You say that there are counties that are performing well, but the majority of counties are being audited. And if you just look at the headlines, at least 33 counties are yet to account for even monies given to them last year. Now, when you throw in 50 billion more for more projects, what are we saying?
I believe what the president said was that the 50 billion is supposed to be a performance-based conditional grant. So essentially, I don't think it is every county that qualifies for that. And if you also look at the other aspect, is for purposes of overhauling the main towns. So if you look at those two aspects, the county has first to show that it has performed. So I think that would be the first pre-qualification before such a grant can be given to that county. So, and then at the same time, if you listen to the president gave a warning that all the corrupt individuals that are in those counties, all the lethargic employees that are working in those counties and in the public sector, that their time is up. So I believe what he's trying to do is to ensure that in addition to him going for the Big Four in terms of the national government implementing the Big Four, he believes that the county governments themselves can also be strategic partners in the implementation of the Big Four. And that's the reason why in his address he highlighted healthcare and said that he's going there. And unlike last time when there was a tug of war between governors and the executive over the issue of the running of hospitals, over the issue of the grants that were granted to the medical facilities. So this time round, he told them that we have to work together because healthcare, universal healthcare, is one of the Big Four issues that he's dealing with. So he believes that that by providing whatever grant that is going to those counties, then counties are going to supplement. Because what I believe is 70% of the health facilities in this country are under the county government, because health is a devolved function. So essentially, the greatest players in this sector are going to be the devolved units of government. Okay. Yes.
But okay, and it's you've said it very well. Yes, and the president, of course, is very keen to ensure that his 4-point Big Four agenda is implemented. But don't you think that probably he's trying a sort of tokenism to try and entice the governors? Because yes, we curiously we are looking at a very interesting sort of dalliance now between the COG and the executive that was not there before. Yesterday we had the Council of Governors chairperson, Bwana Nanok, the governor for Turkana, saying yes, we will now work towards the president's Big Four agenda, which was, yes, it is something that could be positive, but it is also something very curious. Counties are supposed to be independent to some extent, but when the COG comes out and says clearly, we will now work, mirror our development agenda to that of the president's, then we see 50 billion being thrown in right there a few minutes later. Don't you think that's a bit curious?
No, there's nothing curious about it. The architects of the Constitution were very clear that we have only one government at different levels. If you look at the Constitution, again, it's very clear that the two levels of government needs to cooperate for purposes of development. And indeed, it was just a fight in vain. It was a necessary fight between the national government and the county government because their roles are distinct and in some way complementary. There's nothing actually in the Constitution that stops the national government from undertaking any government development in any part of the country, whether the governors like it or not. they have a right to proceed and do anything they want. My view and my feeling is that the governors have found that unnecessary fights and squabbles does not add any value. The problem that the country is facing is poor revenue collection. Obviously, they also understand that there is no money at the national government, so a system must be found to literally have a working relationship.
Yes.
If you can't beat them, join them. There are better ways, there are always better ways of extracting favors, privileges from somebody instead of endless fights.
Was that the main intention of devolution, that the county governments would simply mirror what the national government is doing? Because there are needs in Nyeri County that are different from what the national government is probably thinking about. The county government of Wajir could be thinking about other things, probably away from manufacturing and housing. Yes, probably the county of Nairobi would be thinking about housing, but different counties have different problems. When we decide that the COG will simply agree, we will just mirror what the national government is doing, are we losing out? Are we not losing out on the initial meaning of the devolution?
I don't think so, because comparatively, the national government and the county governments do not act as perfect substitutes when it comes to offering services to the Kenyan people. They actually act as complementary partners, because the money the county government spends in their services and offering products, so to call them, and the ones that are used by the national government, pesa ni ya serikali moja. And I agree with you partly that different counties have different dynamics. And I believe that is why we actually devolved, so that the people of Murang'a can deal with their problems which probably are a bit more singular to them. The people of Wajir can deal with their problems maybe which are more singular to them. But wholesomely, Fred, if you bring a Murang'a person here, and a Nyeri person, and a Wajir person, there is nothing actually peculiar with any of them. Because after all, the problems that we face as a Kenyan people are more the same. When you talk about the big four, we are talking about addressing the issue of unemployment. We are talking about addressing the issue of healthcare. We are talking about food security. If you talk about maybe those three first, there is no Kenyan, or there is no part of Kenya that is fully employed in terms of offering employment. There is no part of Kenya that is fully fed. And therefore, these facets or these four agendas, they are cutting across. And again, in every country, from Singapore growing to Israel, to the US, to the UK, there is always a singular agenda. Because for a country to grow even in terms of economies of scale, you need to focus on certain things, maybe first, then you are done away with them so that you can graduate to the other. And I think having a concentrated agenda like the ones that we have now from the president, the big four, is a very good move. But I want to caution, and I want to also add my voice on that. I hope even the president will be touching on that matter when he addresses the nation on the 2nd. Whereas we have the big four, they can never be materialized. They can never materialize if we do not seal the loopholes where public resources are siphoned. I think corruption should be, or fighting corruption, should be included as number 5 big agenda. Because after all is said and done, we can never offer health care that is cheap and affordable. We can never feed our nation. We can never offer employment. If all the money we collect as a nation, maybe a third goes to individuals' pockets through corruption. Maybe we need to review the way we deal with the corruption. We are doing our part in Parliament. We are reviewing the contracts bill, the government contracts bill, so that if you offer a tender, because most of the money in this country gets lost through procurement, you will carry personal responsibility. And therefore, I believe if we tackle corruption, we will have all the resources to concentrate on the big four, and all these fights we are seeing about county governments and national government will dissipate, because everyone will have their resources to run away with the agenda.
But are we not encouraging some level of laziness among governors if they're simply going to copy and paste whatever blueprint the president has come up with? Because yes, talk about healthcare. There are proactive governors like Professor Kivutha Kibwana, who has already done a lot, even before the president declared his Big Four agenda and rolled it out. Some other governors have never touched that particular issue in their counties. Now, would they just be sitting down and waiting? After all, the president is doing this, I don't need to do anything. Let's wait for the president to do it.
I wouldn't take that approach, and I have two reasons. One is, as I've mentioned earlier, health, for example, is a devolved function. It is a function that's supposed to be carried out by the county government. Counties control over 70% of the health facilities that we have in this country. Therefore, there is no way the national government would provide universal health care, for example, if it does not complement the efforts that are being undertaken by the county government. Therefore, if you look at this aspect, the work of the county government is putting up infrastructure for those health facilities. They're putting up hospitals, providing, let's say, medicine and drugs. And then the national government now comes in terms of supplementing for purposes of ensuring that there's sufficient staff in the health facilities, there is enough medicine, and that at the same time, what I understand is that the government is going to use NHIF. If that's what I understand, the national government is going to use NHIF as its vehicle towards ensuring that there is universal health care. And listen to the president, he said that he does not want to see a situation where if people go to hospitals, there are no drugs. And therefore, he called upon the county government to ensure that they prepare to receive all the medicine and the equipment that is going to be supplied to them. But that being the issue, I don't believe that all the county governments are supposed to focus on the Big Four. Now, that would be a problematic approach. The reason would be that you do not have, for example, manufacturing as a problem in a place like, say, in Isiolo or a place in Marsabit. Why? Because that county has its distinct problems, and those distinct problems are supposed to be dealt with in a different manner. The same way that you have a garbage, you have a garbage collection issue in Mombasa, and also you have issues with the drainages in Nairobi. But the problem we have is that governors do not want to take initiatives on the things that matter, and the problem is one, that because of the short period you have for 5 years, they want to be seen to have accomplished so much, but they do not want to focus on specific issues. And the reason why I would now applaud the national government is because you have a situation where the president says that my full focus for the remaining 5 terms is going to be on this.
So you confirm that we're encouraging a bit of laziness?
We are encouraging a bit of laziness, but what we have not seen is we have not seen the county governments themselves coming up and saying that these are the areas that we are going to prioritize.
There are governments that have actually done that. And the same example that even the president uses, Professor Kivutha Kibwana did not have to wait for the president to say that healthcare is important for a county like his. He went ahead, was proactive and did this. Other governors have not even thought about it. Yes, yet they've been receiving funds. Now it will become important just because the president said they did not have that plan before.
Probably, Fred, just to put the issue in perspective, there's the Big Four agenda. Then there are the enablers. If I was a governor, I would focus on the Big Four because they would attract attention, that attract funding from the national government.
Especially the money from
But then look at the enablers. And as my colleagues have said, each county has got peculiar issues they need to address. In any case, even the 4 big agendas cannot be given the same level of priority. There are those that are more higher priority. There are those that are of lower priority. For example, in rural-based counties, issue of manufacturing might not be very a big priority, but the focus is agri-based business that can generate employment. Some counties, issue of infrastructure becomes critical because it's an enabler. For you even to get to a health center, you need passable roads for an ambulance to pick a sick and emergency case and take them to hospital. You need water to run a hospital. You need so many enablers. So if I was a typical governor, I would I'll do a need assessment in my own county, then realign my needs towards the Big Four agenda and generally pick a few areas and use the national government because it has got bigger capacity to attract funding and generally focus on those issues. If you are talking about housing, you can't talk about housing without water, without electricity. I mean, there's an opportunity here for county governments to literally leverage on the talked about 4 big agendas to develop the areas that require need. For example, if you look at the 50 billion that have been given to improve urban areas in these counties, I'm sure the president knows that the next frontier is urbanization. We need to get people from rural areas. We open space for agriculture, serious agriculture. And that means we need to concentrate people in urban areas, leave land for agricultural production. And that probably also will help in food security. So it's a fairly an interlinked system. If only the governors can take advantage of this system, then they would
because
go
it's
far.
it's easier said than done. Case in point, you remember in the last, the first term of President Uhuru Kenyatta, when the national government rolled out, went out and procured some equipment for hospitals. The governors were not ready for that. And it became a problem, and up till today, some of that material has actually, and the equipment has gone to waste. It is easier said than done. The president could expect and probably even dish out a few shillings, a few coins here and there to entice the governors. But even the ability of the governors to actually comprehend the kind of policy plan that the president has and actually implement it on the ground, it could not happen probably. It might not happen.
I think just like any other department of government, governorship, in my opinion, is a matter of personality. Because we have the same structures, we are in the same country, but we see some governors taking miles ahead or being miles ahead in comparison to their peers. And I think it's the same even with the government ministries or any other responsibilities that we serve in as leaders. Because I tend, for example, to ask, when a person like the late Meshuki would be transferred to any ministry, even the nondescript ones, those ministries would actually shine because of his personality. The same case is with the county governments. Because I can tell you, Fred, the problems that are in many counties are the same. But the reason why we see some governors doing so much, like most of us have quoted Professor Kivutha Kibwana, in many areas, when you go to healthcare, manufacturing, at least he has something to show in terms of what he has done. What makes him perform, and another governor being given actually more resources by the national government and actually collecting more in terms of levies and taxes down there, is not able to perform. I think the issue also has to do with personality, but more so, I have to say, the biggest bottleneck that we have in terms of development revolves around corruption. Because there is no way you can describe or you can explain some counties doing so well and others doing so poorly. But in my opinion, I always think maybe as in the formative years, we could have designed devolution and we could have defined or developed a structure like the one we use in CDF. Because in county governments, you are given water, a glass full of water. Then you are told you can divide this water in whatever way you want. In CDF, we are given an opportunity to show the kind of projects that you want to implement in Mashinani. Then we are given money conditionally, that this money was to go to this primary school to build 2 classrooms in this manner. But now the county governments have a lot of freedom, where you are given money, maybe the structures are not watertight down there. It is the work of the governor singularly actually to decide what to do with the money. Probably we need to review that so that when the money comes out from central bank, from the treasury, it goes to Kakamega conditionally, that this money is actually going to develop this health center, and in this manner, probably will be able to seal the many loopholes. Because the bottom line is that this county performs because they don't steal more. and this other one does not perform because money goes to the pockets of specific individuals.
Going forward, do you now see like governors will be competing probably to endear themselves to the national government? Because if you do that, after all, the grants are conditional. If you do it according to us, you get more. Don't you think that now, because the script is the same, it's like an exam, all counties now, all governors want to replicate the Big Four agenda. Now, who does it better will probably get more from central. Is that the kind of situation we're looking at now?
I would say probably you would get to such a situation. And this being that the president did not even give a criteria that is going to be used to determine which counties fall in the performance, what do you call, qualify for the performance-based conditional grant. So you'll find a situation where that there are certain counties that will be working towards showing that our plans are aligned to what the national government want, and therefore would benefit if the national government comes in. But going back to the example that you gave about the previous the situation where you had medical equipment that had been supplied by the national government to the county government, I believe that there were issues we had with the previous council, COG, Council of Governors. And I believe that the problem we had was all to do with procurement of these equipment. They did not want to be supplied with equipment. They want to be in charge of procurement of these equipment, so that, and we know in all these, there would have been, let's say, because there was corruption and that we know it, so maybe there could have been kickbacks, there would be a whole loophole to make money from these. But the moment they were provided with these facilities, there was no reason why they ought not to have taken them. But I believe the reason why they had issues with them is because they wanted to be in charge of procuring those equipment.
If the handshake had not taken place, would you encourage all governors who are in NASA governors, to simply align all their development goals to the Big Four?
Handshake or no handshake, each governor is responsible to the people that elected him or her.
Yes.
Ultimately, you might, at the end of your 5th term, the people will ask you, what have you done for us? Even you as a person, from a moral point of view, you will ask yourself and interrogate yourself, what have I done to my people, whether handshake or no handshake? But the purpose of the handshake was generally to tone down the political rhetoric, to tone down the division that were becoming endemic. It was never meant to cover ills, problems, and challenges of governance in this country. The governors still remain accountable to the people that elected them. The governors still remain accountable to the entire nation of Kenya, because the funds they are using are public funds generated by the people of Kenya.
But do you think that without the handshake, these governors from regions, governors who come from ODM, who come from WIPA, would have actually simply accepted to align their development agenda to that of the president?
I don't speak for the governors. I don't know. But all that I know, ultimately, there was a discussion that we must move forward. We must develop our areas, because ultimately we'll be held accountable. Irrespective of whether there are demonstrations or not, we'll be held accountable for the 5 years we have been given mandate to manage the affairs of our people.
Dr. Ojiambo Oundo, MP Funyula, Dindi Nyoro, MP Kiharu, and Murigi Kamande, a lawyer and also socio-political commentator. Let's take a break. When we come back, we continue looking at what's happening in Kakamega. MCAs want their own equalization fund as well. That's a whole big debate. We'll be looking at that. Plus, the politics. Governor Nanok of Turkana County appears to be in some sort of dalliance with Ruto, and the headline on the front page of the Daily Nation asks, has Ruto taken Nanok from Raila? That after the break.